Sprinkle this into her food. When she eats, speak what you desire. If you say she shall be a bird, she will fly into the sky. If you say she shall be a stone, she will lie lifeless on the ground. But remember, woman, once done, it cannot be undone." Her voice twisted into bleats. Her skin darkened, fur sprouted, and before the eyes of all, she fell to the ground as an ugly black goat. Bisi lived under the roof of her mother's elder brother, Uncle Shola. Her parents had traveled the long road from which no traveler returns, so Shola, with a heart roomy as a barn, took her in and spread his love like a wrapper over a shivering child. But hear me, where there is light, shadow also stretches itself. Shola's wife, Chioma, watched Bisi the way a hawk watches a chick neck long with suspicion, eyes sharp with envy. Her own daughters, Kemi and Bukunmi, were fine girls, yes, with ankle bells that sang when they skipped and teeth that flashed when they laughed. Yet whenever the school drum beat for results, it was Bisi's name that climbed to the top like a nimble palm wine tapper. And each time it happened, Chioma's tongue grew pepper. She would turn to her girls and lash them with words sharper than cane. "Does Bisi have two heads? Answer me. Does she have two heads?" The girls would lower their eyes, and the house would grow tight like a fist. Uncle Shola, gentle as moonlight, would lift a hand and say, "Woman, leave this talk. Comparison is a thief that steals sleep from a child's eyelids." But Chioma's ears were walled like a termite mound. She starved Bisi of praise the way Harmattan starves the yam of water. If soup was rich with meat, Bisi's bowl found the thinnest piece. If chores were shared, Bisi's back bent the longest. Still, the girl's spirit refused to break. She rose before the rooster, swept the compound till the sand shone, fetched water with steady steps, and tied learning to her waist like a baby. When market women asked a sum or a change, it was Bisi's quick counting that sent them smiling away. Children, listen with both ears. A good seed will look for soil, even in a cracked pot. Bisi's goodness sought every crack of that house. Her laughter soothed the crying. Her clever fingers mended torn sleeves. Her songs folded the night into sleep. Often, when the moon peeled itself like ripe pawpaw, she would sit by the doorway, tracing constellations as if reading secret letters from heaven. And sometimes Uncle Shola would join her, the day's dust still clinging to his sandals, and say, "My child, your mother would be proud." Those words were palm oil to Bisi's spirit. But words sweet to one ear can sound bitter to another. Behind the kitchen curtain, Chioma's heart beat a drum of resentment. She told herself stories until she believed them that the uncle's love was unfair, that Bisi swallowed all the sun and left only shadow for her children. She forgot what elders know. The sky is wide enough for many birds to fly. Instead, she counted Bisi's light as an insult, not a blessing. So the house became a stage for small wars. Spoons dropped with too much noise. Sighs carried hidden thorns. Praise was rationed like salt in a famine. And yet, Bisi kept gathering her small victories, a neat calabash here, a solved riddle there, a smiling neighbor at the gate. The village noticed. The world has eyes, my children. Even the wind whispers about diligent hands. Remember this, and carry it like cola in your pocket. When envy enters the house, peace packs its load and leaves. The door has creaked. The traveler called Envy has set down her bag. What she will unpack, we shall soon see. It was a bright morning, when the sun had just risen like a golden gong above the hills, that the village crier came striding through the dusty streets. His bell clanged loud, gling, 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 and his voice rolled like thunder. Hear ye, the prince, son of our great king, seeks a wife. All maidens of the land must prepare, for in 7 days the palace gates shall open. The prince will choose from among you the woman who will sit by his side and one day wear the crown. The village erupted like firewood catching flame. Girls squealed, mothers began dusting boxes of beads and wrappers, fathers sharpened their pride like knives. The air thickened with excitement. Every maiden dreamed of being chosen, for to marry into royalty was to lift one's family from the dust into the sky. And in Uncle Shola's household, the news dropped like hot yam. Chioma's eyes widened, her lips stretched in a smile that did not reach her heart. Her daughters, Kemi and Bukunmi, danced about, clapping their hands. "Mama, mama, the prince will see us. He will see us." But in the corner sat Bisi, her quiet gaze fixed on the ground, though her heart thumped like a talking drum. She was no fool. She knew her beauty was not just of the skin, but of the spirit, sharp mind, kind tongue, gentle step. Such qualities were not easily hidden. The prince might see them, as others often did. Chioma saw it too, and like a pot too long on the fire, her jealousy began to crack. She looked at her own daughters, pretty, yes, but ordinary in their answers, clumsy in their chores, slow to grasp what Bisi understood in a breath. The thought of the prince passing them over for this orphan set her blood boiling. That night, while the girls prepared by plaiting their hair and polishing their beads, Chioma muttered to herself in the kitchen, "Over my dead body will that girl stand before the prince. She has stolen enough shine. Let her stay in the shadows where she belongs." Uncle Shola, sitting on his wooden stool, did not notice the storm brewing in his wife's eyes. He called softly to Bisi, "My child, do not fear. If destiny calls you, even the deepest forest cannot hide you." But his words were palm oil poured on dry sand. Chioma's heart would not absorb them. The village, meanwhile, buzzed with preparation. Drummers rehearsed beats that would shake the earth. Tailors sewed wrappers from the finest cloth. Mothers rubbed shea butter into their daughters' skin until they glistened like rivers at sunrise. Even old women, stooped by years, whispered prayers that their family might be lifted to the palace. The day of choice was drawing near, and Chioma's jealousy sharpened itself like a machete on stone. The eye that looks upon another with envy will one day cry its own tears. The bell has sounded. The race has begun. What trick will Chioma attempt? The village was now bubbling like a pot of yam on the fire. Every maiden prepared for the great day at the palace. The smell of shea butter mixed with the fragrance of camwood. Beads clicked like tiny drums as hair was braided into intricate patterns, and laughter spilled from the compounds like palm wine from a careless calabash. But in one house, beneath the joyful noise, something darker was brewing. Chioma could not sleep. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw Bisi's radiant face. She saw the prince lifting his gaze from Kemi and Bukunmi to that orphan, that thorn in her flesh. Her daughters were fine girls, yes, but their brightness dimmed whenever Bisi entered a room. And so, in the quiet of night, she rose. The moon was a thin slice, like a knife watching her from the sky. She tied her wrapper tightly, muttered to herself, and set out for the forbidden forest, where whispers said witches lived. Children, do not walk in such forests at night. Spirits keep watch, where men fear to tread. The path was narrow, trees knotted like clenched fists, owls hooted with hollow voices. Chioma's steps did not falter, for envy can be stronger than fear. At last, she reached a clearing where a crooked hut leaned against the shadows. Smoke rose from within, and the smell of herbs and strange oils filled the air. "Enter, woman," came a voice, brittle as dried bones. Inside sat the witch, her eyes clouded but piercing, her fingers long as roots. She chuckled, as though she already knew why Chioma had come. "You carry jealousy like a child on your back. What do you seek?" Chioma knelt quickly. "I want to stop the girl. Bisi. She overshadows my daughters. The prince must not see her. Help me." The witch reached into a basket and pulled out a black pouch. She shook it gently. A strange powder swirled like smoke, though it was dry. "Sprinkle this into her food. When she eats, speak what you desire. If you say she shall be a bird, she will fly into the sky. If you say she shall be a stone, she will lie lifeless on the ground. But remember, woman, once done, it cannot be undone." Chioma's eyes lit like firewood catching spark. She seized the pouch, nodding furiously. "Yes, yes, she will not stand before the prince. I will see to it." The witch cackled. "Go then. But know this proverb. He who calls the rain must be ready to dance in the mud. Chioma did not hear. Envy had already deafened her ears. She left the forest swiftly, clutching the pouch close to her chest, her heart thumping with wicked resolve. Children, listen. The path of jealousy always leads to the hut of destruction. The night held its breath, for a storm was now certain. That evening, Chioma cooked with hands that trembled not from fear, but from wicked eagerness. The soup bubbled thick, the yam softened, and the aroma filled the compound. She whistled softly, a rare sound for her lips, for her heart was dancing to a song only she knew. Into Bisi's portion she slipped the powder, stirring quickly before any eye could catch her. Then she called, her voice sugar-coated, "Bisi, come, your food is ready. Eat well, my daughter." Bisi, trusting as always, smiled and thanked her. She ate with the hunger of youth, never knowing she was swallowing a curse. After the meal, the family retired. Uncle Shola stretched himself on the mat. His daughters giggled softly before drifting to sleep, and Bisi laid her head down, her mind already full of dreams about the festival, about the chance to stand tall before the prince. But children, at midnight, when the moon had climbed to its highest seat, Chioma crept to the doorway. She carried the black pouch and whispered incantations that wrapped the air like snakes. She called Bisi's name 3 times. Then she scattered powder into the night wind. Bisi stirred, her body trembling, her voice cracking into a cry. Her limbs twisted, her skin burned, and before she could understand, her human voice broke into bleats. "Meh! Meh!" Her hands and feet shrank, her face stretched, horns pushed forth, and in place of a girl lay a white goat, shining in the moonlight. Chioma's eyes gleamed. She grabbed the rope waiting by the post, tied the goat firmly, and stepped back with a smile that had no mercy. "Let us see if the prince will choose you now," she spat. By dawn, the village was alive with music. Drums beat, mothers dressed their daughters in cloth that glittered. Hair shone with palm oil, and beads clicked like rain on rooftops. Even in Uncle Shola's house, Kemi and Bukunmi prepared, dancing and laughing. But where was Bisi? Uncle Shola asked, "Chioma, have you seen Bisi? She must prepare too." Chioma answered smoothly, "Ah, husband, do not bother yourself. That proud girl has refused. She said she will not parade like common folk before the prince." Shola frowned but said nothing more. He did not see the truth that his niece, his beloved child, was tied outside, bleating sorrowfully, her tears falling unseen onto the dust. The villagers marched to the square, their footsteps beating like war drums. But behind Shola's compound, the white goat struggled against the rope, its cries unheard by men. The evil one digs a pit for another, but often falls inside first. Yet for now, the goat was tied, and the tail had only begun to burn. The day came when all the maidens of the land were to present themselves at the palace. The morning sun rose with pride, painting the sky in gold and crimson. Drums echoed from the square, and the air was thick with the smell of roasted yam and palm oil. The whole village had become a festival ground. Girls moved in groups, their hair freshly braided into intricate styles, their necks heavy with coral beads. Some wore wrappers dyed with indigo, others in red cloth bright as flame. Anklets jingled, bangles clattered, and every step was a small dance. Mothers whispered charms under their breath, tying cowries to wrists, sprinkling perfumes of camwood and shea. Fathers looked on with swollen chests, hoping their daughters would catch the prince's eye. In Uncle Shola's household, there was both joy and shadow. Kemi and Bukunmi spun before their mother, wrappers swaying, beads clicking. Chioma clapped her hands, her eyes sharp with pride. "My daughters, today is your day. Walk tall, walk proud. The prince will see your beauty." Yet behind the house, tied to the pole, Bisi bleated, her cries slicing the morning air. "Me, me." But to human ears, it was only the voice of a goat. None understood her sorrow. Uncle Shola, however, noticed her absence. He asked once more, "Chioma, where is Bisi? She too is a daughter of this house." Chioma's tongue, quick as a lizard, replied, "That girl is stubborn. She has gone her own way." Shola frowned deeply, but, pressed by time, said no more. When they arrived at the palace square, the sight was one to behold. The king sat on his carved throne, his crown glittering like sunlight on water. The prince, tall and noble, stood beside him, his eyes sweeping across the maidens with care. One by one, families came forward. The maidens bowed, curtsied, and answered questions posed by the elders. The tests were not of beauty alone. Some were asked riddles: what has no mouth but speaks, no legs but runs? Others were asked to recite proverbs or show the skill of pounding yam gracefully. For the king desired not just a pretty face, but a wise and diligent woman for his son. Kemi stepped forward, her beads clinking. She was asked a riddle. After much fumbling, she answered, barely correct, and was allowed to pass. Bukunmi too stepped forward, her wrapper shining. She stumbled over a proverb, but was saved by her mother's encouraging glance. Both sisters were accepted, though without distinction. The prince's eyes, however, searched the crowd. His heart grew restless. He remembered the maiden by the stream, Bisi, her laughter like flowing water, her words sharp yet gentle. Where was she? He leaned forward and asked Uncle Shola directly, "Are these all your daughters?" Shola's mouth opened and closed like a fish caught on sand. His heart told him something was wrong, but before he could speak, Chioma bowed quickly and said, "Yes, my prince, only these. The other one, she is proud. She refused to come, saying she is too good for the palace." The crowd gasped. Murmurs rippled like wind through dry grass. "How can an orphan be so arrogant?" they whispered. "Such pride in a girl with no father, no mother." The prince's eyes darkened. He knew Bisi well enough to doubt those words, yet he was bound by ceremony. He straightened and announced, "I will choose no bride today." The square fell silent. Mothers gaped, fathers frowned, maidens wept, for never had a festival ended without a choice. But the prince's heart was not swayed. That night, the village returned home in confusion. But outside Shola's house, tied to a pole, Bisi lay in the cold, her tears soaking the earth. Her cries rose to the heavens, yet no one understood. Silence can be heavier than drums, heavier even than the cries of a crowd. For though the village had returned to its rhythm of farming and trading, the absence of choice from the prince's lips had left every heart uneasy. Mothers whispered in their kitchens, fathers argued at the palm wine stand, and maidens stared into mirrors of calabash water, wondering why their beauty had not been enough. But the heaviest silence was in Uncle Shola's compound. For poor Bisi was gone from the eyes of the people, yet tied day and night to the wooden post as a white goat. Her cries, "Meh, meh," filled the air. They were cries of hunger, of sorrow, of prayers hidden in the bleating of an animal. Yet to all ears but her own, they sounded like nothing more than the call of livestock. Uncle Shola did not rest. Day after day, he searched. He asked the neighbors, he begged the market women, he even sent word to distant villages. "Have you seen my niece? Have you seen Bisi, the orphan with bright eyes and quick mind?" But each answer was the same. "No, Shola. The girl has vanished." Slowly, grief began to sit on his shoulders like a heavy sack. Chioma watched him, her face painted with false sorrow, her lips murmuring, "Ah, poor girl, she must have run away." But in her heart, she laughed. Each morning she carried scraps, yam peels, wilted leaves, cold water, and threw them before the goat. "Eat, and eat well," she whispered mockingly, "for this is the feast your cleverness has earned you." The goat lowered its head and chewed, tears glistening in its eyes. The villagers soon stopped asking about Bisi. Life, children, is quick to forget those who are silent. The people said, "Maybe she ran to another town. Maybe she was ashamed. Maybe she is gone for good." And so they turned their minds back to their farms, their markets, their quarrels, and their laughter. But listen carefully. Truth does not die because men forget it. It waits, patient as a crocodile underwater, waiting for the right moment to rise. Meanwhile, the prince walked through the palace with a restless heart. His parents urged him to choose another maiden. "There are many daughters of this land," said the king. "The crown cannot wait forever." But the prince shook his head. "My spirit is unsettled. The one I seek is missing." At night, he walked the palace gardens alone, staring at the moon. He remembered the girl by the stream, the way she bent to fetch water, the way her words fell like pearls, the way her eyes carried both sorrow and strength. Could such a girl truly refuse the chance to stand before the king? His heart told him no, something was wrong. So the days became weeks, and the weeks pressed like stones on Bisi's small heart. She grew thin, her once bright face now hidden behind fur, her hands gone, her voice locked in the bleating of an animal. Yet within, her spirit refused to die. She prayed silently, night after night. "O God of truth, O spirits of my mother and father, do not let me perish like this. Send help, even if it is slow in coming." One cool afternoon, when the air smelt of rain and the ground carried the red dust of harvest, a royal figure entered the village. It was the prince himself, tall, with eyes sharp as an eagle's. He did not come with drummers or guards in long lines. No, he came quietly, riding his horse with only 2 companions. The villagers gasped to see him arrive without warning. Women rushed to adjust their wrappers, men bowed, and children scattered in excitement. When he reached Uncle Shola's compound, the family scrambled to welcome him. Shola knelt low, his head touching the earth. "Your Highness, you honor my house." Chioma hurried into the kitchen to prepare food, her mind racing. Why was the prince here? Did he suspect something? The prince looked around, his eyes falling on the strange sight at the gate, a white goat, tied firmly, its fur gleaming even in the dust. It was no ordinary goat. Its eyes followed him with sorrow, almost human sorrow. The prince paused. Something in his heart tugged, but he said nothing. Uncle Shola hurried out, his wrapper hastily tied, dust still on his feet. He bowed deeply. "My lord, you honor my humble house." The prince smiled faintly and said, "Rise, Uncle Shola, let us sit a while." They went inside, and mats were spread. Chioma, caught unawares, darted into the kitchen with her daughters. "Quickly, quickly," she hissed. "Bring the best bowls, cook something worthy of a prince." Her heart beat fast, for she wondered why had he come unannounced. Did he suspect something? Inside, the prince sat quietly with Shola. His eyes scanned the room, then he leaned forward. "Uncle," he began slowly, "there is one of your daughters I have not seen for some time. Bisi, where is she?" At the sound of her name, Shola's face grew heavy. He sighed deeply and lowered his head. "Ah, my prince, that is the sorrow of my heart." Bisi vanished 2 weeks past. One morning she was gone, and though I searched every path, asked every neighbor, no trace was found. It is as if the earth swallowed her. The prince's eyes darkened. "Vanished, without word. That does not sound like Bisi. She would not abandon her family without cause." Before Shola could reply, Chioma swept in, her daughters behind her, bearing bowls of steaming soup and roasted yam. She forced a smile, bowing. "Eat, my prince. Rest your body. Do not trouble your heart about that girl. She was always willful, always disrespectful. I told her to prepare for the festival, but she refused. She said she would not disgrace herself before the palace. Since then, she has not returned. Perhaps she has gone where pride carried her." The prince looked at her, his gaze sharp. He did not answer. Instead, he rose slowly. "Uncle Shola, I thank you for your honesty, but I must take my leave. Matters call me back to the palace." Chioma's heart skipped a beat. All her preparations, her false words, seemed wasted. She forced another smile. "So soon, my prince? At least taste a morsel." But the prince shook his head. He walked toward the gate. And there, tied to the post, he saw it, the white goat, its coat gleaming unnaturally, its eyes following him with sorrow that pierced deeper than words. The prince paused, hand on the gate. He turned back to Shola. "That goat, such a fine and strange creature. May I take it with me to the palace?" Shola blinked, surprised, then bowed deeply. "Yes, my prince. Whatever is mine is yours." Chioma froze, her heart pounding. She had not expected this. She forced a laugh that sounded like breaking clay. "Ah, my lord, if you want the goat, of course, take it. It is only an animal." The prince nodded once, his eyes lingering on the goat's sorrowful gaze. Then with a gesture, his attendants untied it. The rope was placed into the prince's hand, and just like that, the goat was led away. That night, in the palace courtyard, while the other goats slept peacefully, this one could not rest. It bleated and bleated, pacing, eyes fixed on the prince's balcony. The prince, sleepless as well, stepped outside. The moon shone bright, silvering the courtyard. He looked at the goat. "Why do you cry so strangely?" he murmured. When the prince led the strange white goat away from Shola's house, no one knew what fate waited within the royal walls. For 3 whole days, the goat stayed in the palace yard among the other livestock. The prince, occupied with matters of state and distracted by his restless thoughts, forgot her. Bisi, trapped in the goat's body, waited. She bleated often, her cries filled with sorrow, but in a palace where goats were common, no one paid her voice any mind. On the 4th day, news came that the palace would host important visitors from a neighboring kingdom. The king desired a great feast, with food enough to make the guests marvel at the generosity of their hosts. He stepped out onto his balcony, surveying the yard below, where goats, rams, and fowls grazed. His eyes landed on the white goat, so clean, so striking, different from all the others. "That one," the king declared, pointing with his staff. "Slaughter the white goat for my guests. Let nothing but the best be served." The servants bowed and hurried to obey. They rushed to the yard, seized the white goat, and dragged her toward the palace kitchen. Imagine Bisi's terror. She kicked, she struggled, she bleated with all her strength. "Meh, meh." But to human ears, it was only the cry of an animal. No one understood. Inside the kitchen, the fire was already lit, knives laid out, pots waiting. One servant held her still, while another raised the blade to her neck. And just then, by the mercy of the heavens, her cries reached the ears of the prince. He had been in his chambers, restless, unable to find peace since the day he brought the goat. Her voice cut through his thoughts like lightning through a storm. He rose at once, stepped out, and followed the sound. And there, he saw his servant, knife gleaming, about to strike. "Stop!" the prince thundered, his voice shaking the walls. The servant froze. The knife clattered from his trembling hand. The goat broke free, bolting across the floor, running straight to the prince's side. She pressed against him as if begging for protection. All who witnessed it gasped. Such behavior was not of beasts but of humans. The prince's eyes blazed. Who dared bring this goat to slaughter? The servant fell on his knees, trembling. "Forgive me, my lord. It was not my will. The king himself chose this goat from the balcony and commanded it be killed for the feast." The prince's jaw tightened, but he calmed his voice. "Rise, fetch another goat. This one is not for slaughter. Do not touch it ever again." The servants bowed, relieved to be spared further wrath, and hurried to obey. But whispers began to ripple through the palace. Why does the prince protect this goat? What is so special about it? That night, when the palace grew quiet, the prince returned to his chambers. But peace eluded him. Each time he closed his eyes, the goat bleated from the courtyard. Once, twice, again and again, louder each time. At first he covered his ears with the cloth, but the sound pierced through. Finally, he rose and walked out under the moonlight. The goat was pacing, eyes glistening, bleating not like an animal but like a soul in torment. The prince leaned against the railing, watching her, troubled. His heart whispered that this was no ordinary creature. The courtyard fell silent, except for the goat's trembling breath. The prince looked down at the creature clinging to his side, his heart unsettled. He returned to his chamber, but that night sleep would not come. Again and again, the goat's cries pierced the air. "Me! Me!" Restless, the prince stepped out onto his balcony once more. The moon was bright, the courtyard silver with its light. The goat paced back and forth, eyes shining with something more than animal fear. Finally, unable to bear it, he rose from his mat and stepped out onto the balcony. Below, the goats slept curled in the dust, all but one. The white goat paced the courtyard, bleating softly. Her voice climbed the walls like a child crying for its mother. The prince frowned. Something in him stirred. He descended the stone steps quietly, his robe brushing the floor, until he stood before her. The goat stopped pacing, lifted her head, and looked at him with eyes too full of meaning for a beast. He whispered, almost to himself, "Why do you cry so strangely? What are you, truly?" He approached the goat, his sandals soft against the stones. When he reached her, he bent low. "Why do you cry so?" he whispered. The goat lifted her head, eyes wet with tears, and spoke, "Please, your highness, help me. It is I, Bisi." The prince staggered back, nearly falling. His mouth opened, but no sound came. His heart pounded like festival drums. What sorcery is this?" The goat spoke again, her voice breaking with sorrow. "Yes, my lord, it is me. I was cursed. I am no beast. I am the girl you knew by the stream. Save me, before I am lost forever." The prince trembled. He looked at the goat and saw not just fur and horns, but the sorrowful spirit of the maiden his heart remembered. He knew then that destiny had brought her back to him. At once he called out to his guards, "Summon the high priest at once. Wake him if he sleeps. Tell him the prince commands it." The palace stirred. Servants whispered. Guards hurried. And soon the old priest arrived, carrying his staff of truth and the sacred horns. His eyes, clouded yet seeing more than most, fell on the goat. "You called me, my prince. What wonder have you found?" The prince pointed. "This goat spoke to me. She is no beast, but a cursed maiden. Tell me, Holy One, am I mad, or is this true?" The priest stepped closer. The goat trembled but raised her head. Again her voice rang out, clear and steady. "It is true. I am Bisi. Help me, priest. Break this curse." The priest staggered, clutching his staff. Murmurs rippled through the guards. Some fell to their knees in awe. The priest lifted the horns high. "By the spirits, this is no lie. The curse is deep, but the truth has broken the silence." The prince's eyes burned with fury. "Then let her tormentors be brought here at once. Send for Shola, his wife Chioma, and all their household. Tonight, the truth will be laid bare before the king himself." The royal bell rang, echoing across the sleeping village. Guards mounted their horses, speeding through the night. The people stirred from their beds, whispering, "What is happening in the palace? Why do the bells sound at this hour?" You see, the prince did not first set eyes on Bisi at the palace or in the market square. Their story had begun in secret, by the stream that flowed outside the village clear waters, where women came to fetch, and where birds sang like flutes at dawn. Bisi often went there, balancing her clay pot on her head, her steps graceful as a dancer's. She liked the quiet of the stream, for in that place she could think, away from Chioma's sharp tongue and her cousin's envious stares. She would sit by the water's edge, humming softly, sometimes scratching sums into the sand with a stick or reciting proverbs she had learned at school. One morning, as the mist still rose from the water, she found herself not alone. A young man was there, dressed simply but with a bearing that spoke of authority. He greeted her with courtesy, asking if he might share the shade of the tree. She nodded shyly. This, children, was the prince himself. He had often escaped the walls of the palace, preferring the quiet of the land to the noise of court. He disguised himself in plain cloth so that no one would bow or crowd him. And so it was that he and Bisi first spoke two souls by the water, neither knowing what fate prepared. They met again and again. Sometimes he asked her questions. "What do you think makes a person truly wise?" he would say, skipping stones across the stream. Bisi would answer thoughtfully, "Wisdom is not in age alone, my lord. Even a child can teach an elder, if the elder's ears are open." Another time he asked, If you were queen, what would you do first? She laughed lightly, shaking her head. Ah, me, I would make sure no child goes hungry while others waste food, for a kingdom is only as strong as the least of its children. Her words sank deep into his heart, for though her beauty was plain to see, eyes bright as dawn, skin rich and glowing, what struck him most was her mind. She was clever but not arrogant, bold but respectful, kind yet unafraid to speak truth. Slowly, desire grew in him, not the shallow flame of beauty alone, but a steady fire of admiration. He longed not just for her face beside him, but her voice in counsel, her hand in partnership. He began to dream. Perhaps this was the woman who could stand as queen, not by ornament, but by wisdom. Once, as they parted, he said gently, "You are different from the others, I know." Bisi only smiled, lowering her gaze. "Perhaps I am only myself, and perhaps that is enough. Beauty may open the door, but wisdom keeps you inside." It was wisdom, not only beauty, that bound the prince's heart to Bisi. So when the festival day came, and he did not see her among the maidens, his spirit was unsettled. When Chioma claimed Bisi was proud and refused to come, his heart rejected the lie. He knew Bisi. He knew her humility, her gentle strength. Pride was not her way. The royal bell clanged through the village, pulling people from their sleep. "To the palace! To the palace!" the guards shouted. Soon Shola and his family were dragged in, their wrappers hastily tied, their faces confused. In the courtyard, torches blazed. Drums rumbled softly. The king himself descended from his throne, his robe trailing behind him. His face was stern. "What madness is this, my son, that you wake the kingdom at this hour?" The prince bowed but spoke firmly. "Father, patience. You will see wonders with your own eyes." He gestured toward the goat. The priest stepped forward. "Speak, child, if truth is in you." And before the crowd, the goat raised her head and spoke with a voice that carried sorrow and strength. "I am Bisi. I was cursed. The last thing I remembered was eating a delicious meal given to me by Aunty Chioma. After that, while I was asleep, I heard her calling my name into the wind 3 times, when all of a sudden my body began to transform. I am no beast. I am your daughter, Uncle Shola. I am the girl who vanished." Gasps broke through the crowd. Shola staggered backward, clutching his head. "Bisi, my child, spirits above, what evil has befallen you?" Kemi and Bukunmi fell to their knees, weeping. The king's gaze turned sharp as a spear. "Woman," he thundered at Chioma, "do you hear this? Did you do this wickedness?" Chioma fell to her knees, beating her chest, wailing. "Lies, lies, my king. How can a goat speak? It is trickery. I would never harm her." But the priest raised the horns high. "If you are innocent, then touch the horns. Let the spirits bear witness." Chioma's hands trembled. Her lips quivered. "No, no, I cannot." "Touch them!" the guards roared. Forced forward, her fingers brushed the horns. At once her tongue loosened like a pot spilling boiling water. She screamed and confessed, every word tearing out against her will. "Yes, yes, I hated her. She shamed my children. She stole my husband's love. I went to the witch. I begged for power. I poisoned her food. I turned her into this goat. I only wanted her gone. I only wanted her silenced." The crowd cried out in shock. Some covered their faces, others spat in disgust. Shola fell to the ground, wailing. "Chioma, you have destroyed my house. You have brought shame upon us all." The priest lowered the horns, his voice grave. "It is finished. The guilt is clear. But hear me, king and prince. A curse such as this cannot break without sacrifice. To free Bisi, the one who cursed her must pay the price." The king's eyes smoldered. He turned to his son. "What is your will, my prince? Shall we let the curse continue, or shall we demand payment?" The prince's jaw was set like stone. His voice thundered, "Let the curse return to its maker. Restore Bisi, and let Chioma reap what she has sown." The drums boomed, the people trembled, and destiny moved closer to its end. The crowd of villagers who had been roused from their sleep pressed close to the gates, murmuring prayers, gasps, and curses under their breath. The drums beat slowly, like a heart preparing for battle. At the center stood the white goat Bisi, her eyes glistening with hope. Beside her was the high priest, his staff of truth planted firmly in the ground. Opposite them knelt Chioma, her body shaking, her lips still burning from the confession that had spilled out against her will. Uncle Shola wept quietly, holding his head in his hands, while Kemi and Bukunmi clung to one another, trembling. The king rose from his throne, his voice carrying over the crowd. "Priest, the guilt has been exposed. The truth has spoken. What must be done to restore the child and cleanse this land of such wickedness?" The priest's face was solemn. "My king, my prince, and all gathered here, know this, no curse of envy leaves without blood. To undo what has been done, the one who cast the curse must become its vessel. Only then can the innocent be freed." A ripple of shock ran through the crowd. Some gasped, others nodded grimly. For all knew the old proverb, "The arrow of evil returns to the hand that shot it." The prince stepped forward, his voice ringing like iron on stone. "Then let it be so. Let Chioma bear the curse she birthed. Restore Bisi to her rightful form." The drums quickened. The priest raised the horns high, chanting ancient words. Smoke rose from the censers, curling like spirits into the night air. The torches flickered, as if bowing to the power that filled the courtyard. Bisi bleated once, her voice trembling. Then her body convulsed. The goat staggered, shuddered, fell to the ground. The crowd gasped, fearing she was dying. But the priest shouted, "Do not fear, the spirit is moving." Her fur rippled like waves, her legs stretched, her horns shrank, her body twisted and reshaped. A cry rang out, not of an animal, but of a human child. And there she stood, Bisi, restored, her skin glowing in the torchlight, her eyes shining with tears. The people erupted in cries of wonder. "It is her! It is truly her!" Uncle Shola ran forward, falling at her feet, sobbing. "My child, forgive me. Forgive my blindness." But even as joy filled the air, another sound rose, a scream of terror. All eyes turned to Chioma. Her body shook violently, her voice twisted into bleats. Her skin darkened, fur sprouted, and before the eyes of all, she fell to the ground as an ugly black goat. Her eyes rolled wild, her hooves struck the dust, but no words came from her mouth, only the cry of an animal. The crowd recoiled, some spat, others jeered. Let her eat grass now, as she fed Bisi. Let her live as the beast she made. Kemi and Bukunmi wailed, clutching at the black goat that had been their mother. But even their tears could not change fate, for envy had claimed its owner. The priest lowered his staff. His voice was steady. "The spirits have judged. The curse has returned to its source. The land is cleansed." The king turned to the prince. "My son, you have acted with wisdom and courage. What is your will concerning the maiden?" The prince stepped forward, lifting Bisi gently to her feet. He looked into her eyes and spoke with certainty. "This is the woman my heart has chosen. She is not only beautiful but wise, strong, and true. Before all gathered here, I declare that she shall be my bride." The courtyard thundered with cheers. Drums rolled like rivers in flood. Women ululated. Men raised their staffs high. Children danced barefoot on the stones. Joy poured through the night like palm wine spilling from a gourd. And Chioma? She was led away, tethered by a rope, no longer a woman but a beast. Her cries faded into the darkness. The curse was broken. The guilty had fallen into the very pit she dug, and Bisi stood once more in her true form, radiant beneath the palace torches. But the tale did not end with her restoration. No, it flowed forward into celebration, into honor, into the weaving of destiny. When Chioma was dragged away, bleating and kicking in the dust as the ugly black goat she had become, the people's voices rose higher. They clapped, they sang, they shouted proverbs into the night. Truth may sleep, but it never dies. The child who is envied will one day shine brighter than the sun. The courtyard shook with joy. The prince took Bisi's hand and lifted her gently to her feet. She trembled, her eyes heavy with tears, for the memory of her suffering still clung to her like shadows. But the prince held her gaze and said, "Do not weep, Bisi. You are safe now, and you will never be left outside in the cold again." The king, who had watched all with grave eyes, now stepped forward. His robe shimmered, his crown glittered, and his voice carried over the people. "This maiden has endured cruelty and yet remained pure of heart. She is wise, she is brave, she is the one who has captured my son's spirit. Let it be known tonight, the prince has chosen his bride." A cheer erupted so loud it startled the birds from the palace trees. The women of the palace rushed forward, surrounding Bisi with ululations, their voices shrill and joyful. They led her away into the women's chambers, where fires burned in clay lamps and pots of scented water steamed. There, they bathed her in warm water, mixed with herbs, scrubbing away the dust of sorrow. They rubbed her skin with shea butter until it shone, braided her hair into long plaits, threaded with beads of coral and cowries, and dressed her in wrappers of deep indigo and gold. Around her waist they tied a sash woven with royal patterns, and on her arms they placed bangles that jingled with each movement. When she emerged, the courtyard fell silent for a moment. It was as though the moon itself had descended among them. She stood glowing, her head held high, her beauty crowned by dignity and wisdom. The prince stepped forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "This is the woman I desire as my wife. This is the woman I will stand beside when I am king." He turned to the people and lifted her hand high. "Let all know, Bisi, once despised, once cursed, is now the chosen bride of the prince." The people roared their approval. Drums thundered, flutes sang, and dancers leapt into the air. Old men nodded with satisfaction. Young women sighed with admiration, and children danced until their legs grew weak. Uncle Shola fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "My child," he whispered, "I wronged you by silence, but may the gods bless you now. May your days be long, and may joy never leave your doorstep." Bisi knelt before him, taking his hands. "Uncle, you gave me shelter when I was orphaned. For that I forgive all things. Let us walk into tomorrow with peace." As for Kemi and Bukunmi, they wept quietly, torn between shame and sorrow. They clung to their father, knowing their mother's fate was sealed. Yet even for them, Bisi's heart held no bitterness. She looked at them and said softly, "You are still my sisters. Do not let envy ruin your lives as it ruined hers. Choose kindness instead." The celebration stretched long into the night. Food and palm wine were served, songs of victory and justice filled the air, and the people danced beneath the stars. The story of Bisi's suffering and triumph spread like wildfire from one household to another, until even children in distant villages spoke her name. And Chioma? She remained tethered as a goat, her bleating echoing faintly beyond the palace walls, a living reminder of the price of envy. No one pitied her, for the people knew. She had reaped what she sowed.